Welcome, everyone. We are ready to get started on our May 6th DAACAT. Glad to have you. Got myself and Dustin Renner, Nora Schultz, of course, as usual. A number of topics to hit on. Some of them you can probably guess, especially if you've been listening to the conversation here that we've been having already. Of course, start with a trivia question. Talk a little bit about GDUs. It's starting to get interesting to see where we're at on GDUs. Emergence and replant, that time of the year, bound to be something that doesn't look quite right. So we've got to discuss that. Emergence risk forecast, it's getting to the point where we're not really looking at it. Should I be planting now? We're going to go. But now it becomes interesting to look back and say, okay, when should this corn be coming up? Or some of those earlier planting dates, how far along should they be? Then the frost injury, and we're going to talk a little bit about cooking, I guess, pie crust, and then finish up with a spotlight product. So on the trivia, just because we know we were seeing some crust, what are signs that a corn seedling is in trouble when fighting a crust? And, I can give a few just as you start to walk into the field. Like if you're feeling like it's cement and your footprint is not, your foot's not leaving any sort of footprint at all, that's not a good sign. Then if you start digging and you can't even penetrate, probably not a good sign. You might be a redneck too if you can't dig. There we go. Kaya's got the first answer. Pierce also has a good one that I believe is second. And Pierce, there's nothing wrong with being second. It's not first, but it's right there. But Kaya gets it. Definitely swollen coleoptile leafing out. Those are two classic ones, and we will talk about those because we want to discuss that as well as crusting on soybeans. So there's a number of others, of course, some of that kinking and swelling, the splitting, leafing out below ground. The old rule of thumb, if you can't push your finger through that crust, probably the seedling, the corn at least, is going to have a hard time pushing. To me, some of the worst scenarios is we know we've got it sealed over where we don't have any sort of crack down that furrow slice, and then the ground is mucky underneath. Then we don't have much of a chance because that seed doesn't have oxygen. It doesn't get a chance to give much push. It just doesn't have vigor if it doesn't have oxygen and is sealed over. So for soil conditions, we know that's about as bad as it can get. Anything else you want to add on that, Dustin or Nora?
Yeah, we're starting to get a few calls. I think some growers are starting to get a little nervous and maybe jumping the gun. I look back, I think it was like the 21st south of Spencer on Highway 10. There was a band of some pretty heavy rainfall and pounding rain that caused some issues. Not real widespread, but looking at a few of those yesterday, and you can push your finger through it. It's only a 1/4 inch crust. But some growers are anxious, I guess, but get out and look and take a peek.
Yeah, we're going to look south of between Denison and Harlan. And we had a big band of rain. We also had a fair amount of hail with those storms. And how did the hail influence things? But we have some great pictures. Stay on to the end. We have some great infographics of what to look for. Getting some calls of when do you pull the trigger, and we'll cover that today.
All right. Yep. Sounds good. And, most of the ground conditions were ideal, almost too powdery, too much like flour, which obviously is some of the worst case scenarios leading to crusting if we do get those pounding rains. So as far as GDUs, just a little snapshot of where we're at from some of the earlier planting dates, like the 11th of April. We're well ahead of normal. In some cases, like almost 75 GDUs are close to 100 at Ames, just under 100 GDUs ahead of the long-term average. But from that planting date, of course, for corn, everything should be up. And then now, even from that window when there a heck of a lot of corn went in the ground from the 20th through the 22nd, that 22nd was a Wednesday. We're just reaching that threshold for a lot of locations that 90 to 120. I guess what I've noticed is, and this seems to happen most years, it does take that 120, sometimes 120 plus to really get corn out of the ground, especially when we've seen the fluctuations in temperatures. But from the 22nd planting dates, we're pretty much right on par with the long-term average. Some areas are slightly below, but very close to the average. So Nora, you want to talk a little bit on the stands and some of our thresholds there?
Yeah, so this is kind of our old faithful most used charts for understanding our yield potential with the stand that we have. We look at the planting date. So the we're still, we're still at some pretty solid yield potential if we can get a full stand of corn in. So in between that May 5th to May 15th, we read it all the way over to the right on my screen. If we're able to put in a stand of 35,000, we have 96% of yield. And when we use this chart, if we're looking at a replant scenario, we hop up a line. Okay, we planted between April 20th and May 5th, but we have a stand say we have a stand of 30,000. Grower's upset, right? We've lost 5,000 plants. That doesn't feel good. Hey, Mr. Grower, we're still at 99% of yield. If we were to come in and tear up these areas, we've already lost yield potential just for doing that. So we can say, hey, it's a comforting measure. We're still at solid yield potential. Or we come down into the between 20,000, 25,000. We're in that 90% of yield. And we can talk through with the grower, hey, Mr. Grower, this field, we've lost, 10, 15,000 plants. Here's where our yield potential is. But if we can come through it and replant, we can jump up 6%. Now, some growers, we're going to be on the fence, and that's a conversation to really walk through and be delicate. And it's a really emotional conversation, but I encourage you to have these charts, print out these charts. We're going to send these slides out. They're in the newsletters that you guys can sit it at the kitchen table with your growers while you're walking fields to say, hey, here's where we're sitting yield potential wise for the stand we have. A really key part of this is getting good stand counts, guys. It's having a solid measurement. I use a rope with carabiner clips, so I don't have to use a tape measure back and forth. Maybe you guys like tape measures. Maybe you're really good at knowing how big your feet are too, and you can step it off. Like, great, whatever. As long as we're taking accurate and varied yield stand counts across the field to get a really good picture and averaging that out, that's key to being able to use this chart. Because if we're not putting good information into the chart to see where we're sitting to get that accurate stand, we're not going to get good information out. And there could be situations, obviously, we know to the east of me, to the east of you guys, when we're dealing in that heavier ground, we may need to manage based on our low areas, right? And kind of break the field out and target those areas specifically. To our south, we may be dealing with some buried seed, some washout. Do we handle that differently? So you can break it out. It doesn't have to be a solid field average, but going out, getting an important, clear, even representative stand count is key to using these charts. But we can see that even a May 10th planting date, if we did need to go in and do something for crusting, we still have a lot of great yield potential, guys. But if we're waiting till the sprayers roll and we're diagnosing this the 30th of May or the 10th of June, no matter what we do, even if we go in and put a full stand, we've really kicked ourselves in the rear here yield potential wise. So now is the time to be managing this. Even though it's an unpleasant conversation, it's way more pleasant to have it now. What do you guys have as talking points?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have an opportunity to replace these stands, and these charts are great, but they're a guideline, and that's the biggest thing when anything we do. Nothing's perfectly black and white, and there's a lot of emotion that goes in the decision. I take into some other considerations how high yield potential is this farm? Where is it located? Is it right outside his kitchen window and the guy's going to have to look at it all year long and just fret about it? There's just a lot of different scenarios that come in to making a determination on what to do.
Yeah. To me right now, I'm at that 26 to 28 1,000 threshold, but like you say, yeah, there's definitely wiggle room, and that's just an overall guideline. It's got to be a mutual decision. But I really, we've mentioned this a few times with the early planting date and actually the high GDU accumulation, that does give us an opportunity to evaluate these stands, especially from that 10th through the 15th of April planting dates that, usually we're not this far along. So we should have a good idea on those fields, if we've got an acceptable stand or not. And of course, if you're thinking about RMs, one word of advice, don't, but go ahead, Nora.
Yeah, so this is for some of my eastern guys and southeastern guys. We've gotten a lot of rainfall. We know that. You guys are delayed for where you have been the last few years. We've had it in the newsletters, right? It feels late, but we're not that late. It's a little bit of recency bias to that. And so I've already last week had started getting calls about guys wanting to switch their RMs. They see the northwest part of the state rolling, having corn coming up where we're just planting in some parts, just starting yesterday for some guys. So we are not really to the point where we're switching RMs. And we showed in those previous charts, we are still in optimal yield potential ranges right now. There's a lot of things that we can do to mess up our corn past a 96% yield potential, right? So just getting it planted this week, you're not harming yourself. So stick with the RM that you have in the shed. Talk those guys through, maybe we change a planting order, right? Maybe we tweak a little, maybe there's a little bit of placement or something that needs to be tweaked so that guys can go get something in a different way or have it closer to a dryer. Maybe there's some tweaks there that could happen, but for your yield potential, we do not need to be switching RMs until we get to the point of past May 20th. For the forecast that I see, we shouldn't be having those conversations. I was in Dallas Center, 2 days ago. I was over in Lanyon yesterday. We're planting. Conditions are fit. We can cover a heck of a lot of ground, guys, in the next couple days without rain in the forecast. So let's just get what we have in the shed in, and then we'll cross that bridge if we do come to replants, things like that. But let's use our full season products.
Yeah, that would go too for if we are making a replant decision. Growers would still have that option of coming back in with a similar maturity hybrid. So, sometimes even if it's an early replant, the mentality is, I got to jump down to 90, 95 degree day corn. No, not so much. So as far as the emergence risk forecast, just looking back, there's always some variance. This was a scenario where this field was planted on the 15th. This would have been in O'Brien County. And when I took the picture a couple days ago, we were at 135 GDUs. The IRF was predicting the 2nd of May for emergence. I would say it probably was within a day. Maybe it came up a day later. And again, it seems like it's that 120 plus, even 130 GDUs where we're actually able to get a stand count. But like we've seen in the past few years, it's close. It's a model, so you're going to have variance with different weather conditions. But I would say overall, it's been pretty close. And again, it's been interesting to go back and look at some of those windows and starting to get a feel of maybe some windows that were better than others for overall emergence. More to come on that. I don't have any dates right now that I would say, this was not a good date to plant. I haven't seen enough to make that call. Nora, you want to talk a little bit on the parts, what corn should look like?
Yeah, these are some good examples of what corn should look like as you're digging up when you're establishing, do you have crusting issues? Do you have emergence issues? This is a good one to keep on your phone, right? If you're unfamiliar, we need to have our mesocarp. We want them straight up. Obviously, there can be some curves, right? Depending on how the seed was placed in, heading straight up to the soil is going to give it the most strength to poke through. Kind of like how you have a what is it called? An egg tooth on a chick, right? That coleoptile on that point, that's the egg tooth trying to break through that surface. We want it straight up. We want it fully enclosed. There's going to be some pictures towards the end where we can show some of the unhappy plants, what they shouldn't look like. But we can start to see those first true leaves through that coleoptile, and we can see when it's starting to get some light, right? It should look kind of yellow. As soon as it's going to start hitting some red light, the coleoptile will break open. We'll start to get those first true leaves out. That's when we lose our pushing power, and they'll also start to turn the normal shade of green. So this yellow color that looks kind of unhappy, this is totally normal until it starts to get some sunlight. We want to see healthy radical roots. We want to see, we can potentially start to see some sidewall compactions already. You can start, as you're digging things, you could start to see some concrete sidewalls and things not able to push through appropriately. But this is happy corn, and we want every single one to look like this. Dustin or Jim, any other comments?
Nothing really, just that coleoptile is gonna, encase all of your leaves, and as you burst that from crusting, yes, you lose your pushing power leafing out underground. We start to lose some stands. So
yeah, that coleoptile will split if it's it can be triggered by sunlight. So if there's a crack that's starting to open up, that can certainly cause a problem. And then again, it loses the pushing power. Or if it breaks out the side, if we've got a crust on top and it breaks off the side, then again, you're just losing a lot of that pushing power. This small kink right there in the middle, I'm not too concerned about that, unless you're considering the yield loss from not having the seed oriented right. But haven't been able to figure that one out quite yet. But that's not too severe yet. But yeah, we'll see some more severe ones as we go towards the end, where it really is swelling up and curling all the way around the seed. Gonna hit on the soybeans, Dustin?
Yeah. So obviously we have a lot of beans up, and we've had some cooler nights and a lot more capability to overcome, thinner stands. As we've talked over the years, that I've been in the business, we were drilling at 180,000, and these populations keep going back as we go to the field, 140, 120 even seeding rates. But as we go out and evaluate these stands, we have seen 100% yield potential on 100,000, even less. There's some high yield growers out west that, are really big into singulation on soybeans, and they're getting big yields at, 75,000 final stands, as long as they're evenly spaced and they're uniform across the field. That's the biggest thing. So get out there, take a peek at these beans. I don't know if we have any. I know, Jim, you ran into a little bit from the frost damage, and maybe some plants got affected. I haven't seen anything. We need to really go out and look at these low-lying areas to see if we lost any stand. That's really where that frost is going to affect these plants the most. But the biggest thing on beans as well, the ones that are emerged are mostly, some tilled ground where you get that radiant heat coming off that black soil. I haven't seen any really no-till beans that have been up that were planted early. Those are the ones that we're really going to have to watch out. You don't get that radiant heat off that soil surface. So, but again, we can live with some pretty low stands and still achieve 100% yield potential on soybeans.
Yep, you bet.
These are some graphs. They're a little hard to see, but these are from Eric Snodgrass, a meteorologist. He's really good. He puts out a weekly YouTube video. They're about a half hour that just talks about, the forecasted weather and into summer. So this graph that you're looking at, that lighter yellow, as you can see, these are hours below freezing from May 1st to May 3rd. And you can see, we had anywhere from 3 to 6 hours of below freezing temperatures for those days. And then the next graph is really the one that kind of hits home a little bit more, would be, so this is a hard freeze. Graph. So you can see in the lower left, that black is a hard freeze. The really dark color of under 28 degrees, kind of that middle shade of gray is less than 32. And then obviously a chance of frost lower than 36. But as you can see from, those dates, May 1st to May 3rd, over the weekend, Friday night, I'd seen 27 on my pickup on Saturday morning, early Saturday morning. So we needed to take a look at that, but we had a wide range, basically our whole territory in Northwest Iowa that we've had frost risk over the last few days. And again, last night.
Yeah, the last 2 nights in some places. Yeah, unusual to see it over that big of an area. So yeah, to talk about that, these are some of the bean fields that I looked at within the last couple days. This was the 8th of April planting. So area that I cover, that was about as early as really. I know there was a little bit in March, but this was as far as wide scale planting. This was some of the earlier dates. There's some plants that aren't going to make it. That one certainly has that brown look. Pinched look right below the cotyledons. You look down the row here, there's one that's pretty much done for. A lot of them right at the surface that are going to be fine. The crazy thing is, this picture here on the left is the same picture. I just pulled this plant, so this plant is right next to that one, which is perfectly healthy. Most likely it wasn't quite up, or at least it was maybe just at the surface, and then after the frost it went ahead and poked up. But that plant right next to it looks like it's done. Again, it's got that pinched brown look below the cotyledons. A few of these others that have the withered look up on the growing point. Now sometimes if your hypocotyl below the cotyledons is still okay, you can have some regrowth from the axillary buds, just like after hail. So sometimes ones like this I wouldn't give up on, but really you have to get that plant out of the ground and see what it looks like as far as the health of that hypocotyl. So a field like this, it wasn't no-till, but had a lot of trash. It was at all stages of emergence, as what we usually see from this earlier planting date. There was beans that were up, there were beans that were probably coming up over a 2-week period. So that's most likely what's going to save it. There'll be some stand loss. At least when I looked at this field a couple of days ago, I don't think it's enough where it's a replant. When it's all said and done, and we still have to evaluate and still have to see what these thin areas look like. May need to add a little bit of stand here and there. But I haven't seen anything myself that's a wide scale replant across a whole field. Certainly crusting been an issue too. This was a field planted the 16th no-till. Obviously see what that crusting looks like. At least it does have that slice right in the furrow, so that gives us a chance as long as those beans can find it. The biggest thing with beans in these situations is, are you going to swell up that hypocotyl, or are you going to break off the cotyledons? That's usually where that stand loss is going to be. This field needed a little longer to evaluate. This was probably the worst spot in the field. It wasn't going to be across the whole thing, but there'll be some areas that I would guess would be pretty thin, but much better than really what it looks like right now. There's quite a few areas like this where those soybeans were finding the crack. They still had some push. Most all of them, I hadn't seen any of them that had given up. Most all of them still had quite a bit of vigor left and hadn't thickened up that hypocotyl yet. So felt like this had a decent chance, even though it looked really tough on the surface.
So I'll jump in here. These are, you guys are just going to get used to it. I really like, Purdue does some great infographics. I just love their labeling. I think it's really easy to understand if you guys need to put it out on a counter or something, or take to a farmer and kind of leave with them to digest. But here are some symptoms for corn of leafing out underground. Gives the explanation of, hey, we have the swollen mesocotyl here. We have the coleoptile has broken out, right? We've opened that leaf sheath, and we've started to get that leafing out underground. We can see here on in the right image, it's a pretty small crust. You'd like, oh, you can break through that. Once we are missing that tip of the coleoptile, we just don't have the pushing powder. So and so these are for you guys to use later, but if we could go to the next slide, the conversations that I had yesterday in the southern part of my territory are, when do I know it's time to go? And this, I thought, was a really good image to show how close and zoomed in you should look to see, am I losing my pushing power? We can see that those leaves, that coleoptile sheath has opened, it's cracked. Without close inspection, you might think that it's fine, but it is just cracked open. And so those are the fields, those are the areas that we really want to be on high alert for potential leafing out underground. It would be great if we could reach all the fields at this point. We know we can't. So the images prior, that's a bummer. If we can catch it here, if we can look really closely when we're digging, that can give guys a better start on thinking, do I need to go out here and manage? We don't want to use the rotary hoe recreationally, right? It is something that is being done for a reason. It's something potentially you don't need to do the whole field. I've done rotary hoeing on my own fields where we just went through and hit the wet spots. Just like what Jim said, we had areas that were crusted over. We did not have oxygen. We went through and busted those up. So it doesn't need to be an all or nothing situation. You can hit those targeted areas. Doing a good scout can bring that value to your growers and find those areas. When I'm looking at potential for you to using rotary hoe, we're going fast, right? We're not sitting there digging up soil. We don't want to hit the plants that are doing well, but 1 to 2% stand loss from the rotary hoeing, I wouldn't be surprised about. But we're going fast, 8 to 10 mile an hour. You guys can tell me if you say difference. And we're just wanting to hit that top. We're just wanting to hit the soil. We're not doing a tillage application, guys. We're not trying to make it look like a garden. We're cracking it. We're flying over the field to give those plants an opportunity to come up through those openings. So if you have a grower that's doing rotary hoeing, if we look like we're getting damage of existing stand or good plants that's above that 1 to 2%, we need to kind of adjust our speed and find that sweet spot. That's probably that, or the depth. And those are adjustable, right? You're not, just like planting, we're not going to set the planter and fly across every field. We're not going to do the same thing with the rotary hoe. So go out, double check behind you, make sure you're happy and comfortable with what it's doing, and take the time to find that sweet spot, because it will pay in the end to take that time. Run with the rows, not across them. We're just breaking that up. Do you guys have any other points for guys that might need a rotary hoe?
I've always been a big believer in the hoe, and usually we're on the late side. We're doing other things. We're planting or we're spraying, and it's like, by the time we get out there, it's too much of a cement driveway. But I've seen some amazing things with the hoe. Like 2 years ago, we saved some stands. So use it. Soybeans, not so much. And that's just a comment I had. Soybeans, I've seen it done, and that's a last case scenario. Of course, when they're in that crook stage, they're very susceptible to snapping off. So pretty much never an option on soybeans unless you have no other resort.
Yeah, your planter is probably safer than a rotary hoe at that point to break a crust.
Yeah, and we've seen that, thicken some stand, come in with a planter, and then add some stand, and also you break up the crust. And of course, we saw that in the last few years too, where that's added too many plants.
Yeah, that is a delicate dance in soybeans. Luckily, they are very forgiving of us, guys. Take good stand counts, and just like Dustin said, those lower pops, they're very forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And then just kind of finish up last slide here. Before the end, we always like to highlight some products, new products coming forward, especially the high volume products. And this would be the new one on the early side last year, 10363 SmartStax Pro. That picture's a little hard to see, but thank you, Adam Peterson. All my early plots, I tried to dive around yesterday. I didn't have anything emerge. So Adam Peterson took this picture yesterday down in Plymouth County, planted 415, looking pretty good coming out of the ground. As we think about 10363, we've really lacked that 103-day market. We had some old standbys that we sold, on thousands of acres with 53, 63, 54, 38, the good old days, where this one really comes in and kind of is a similar type product like that. Go anywhere, broad acre, great agronomics, as you look through it, great late season plant health. That's the thing with that late season plant health. It's going to carry a little bit more moisture, but you look at overall agronomics, disease ratings, these are directional for tar spot, but it's above average on tar spot, good on gosses, and basically every foliar disease that we have. So just a great product that fits a lot of acres. I do like to call this out because we've mentioned it through the growing season and field days. A couple of these new products have a caution for growth regulators. So this one does have a caution for growth regulators. We're not too far away from post-spraying this corn. That does not mean we can't spray dicamba, but we should be smart when spraying it and using Diflex Safen products and spraying early.
Excellent points. Yeah, I agree. Broadacre, I would say the stress tolerance or drought score is just average, so I have to be a little cautious that way. But boy, overall, this one's got a nice fit. It's also my background here, right behind me. Pictures from last year. The corn's a little farther along, but it's a good one to have as a background. Well, I know we are 2 minutes past our target, but we are wrapped up for the DAACAT. Again, appreciate everyone being on. Certainly stay on a minute or two if you have any questions or comments or anything else to add into the chat for us.
Or give us a call whenever.
It's been a busy spring, and I know everybody's ready for a break, but it would be great to get out and start looking at some fields, do some customers some good if we can find some problems that we can attend to before it's too late. So.
Have a great day, guys. Enjoy the beautiful weather. Remember, a bad day working out in the field is still better than a good day in an office. So, even when it's cold.
All right.
It's accurate.